Good morning. On today's episode of Legally Direct, Legally Revenant. This is Debbie Wilmot coming to you for a quick MBE video. So, MBE, ready or not, here I come. It's hard to believe that I've been on this self-study law journey now for 8.5 months, and I'm almost finishing my first year of law office study program. And honestly, I'm loving every minute of it. I'm learning a lot of new stuff. So, in the beginning, I wasn't that into criminal law and criminal procedure, and still, it kind of spooks me a little bit, freaks me out, but I'm learning that, you know what, there's interesting parts of that law too. And it's funny because that is often the part of the law that we get the most exposure to from television. So I know this is kind of weird, but I was watching a show on Netflix yesterday and she's at the DA office and she's using legal terms and things like that. So it actually is one of the ones, I mean, we do embezzlement, but I mean, that's criminal law too. So you just don't see as many other disputes portrayed in TV, which is something that I didn't really think about. So of course, I'm gonna tell you that this video is sponsored by Bar Exam Drills. Bar Exam Drills is my law office study program sponsor, and they are helping me to prepare for the bar without going to law school. Bar Exam Drills is a great app that you put on your phone. The great thing about it is you can do MBE questions anywhere at any time. It is cheaper than most of the other programs, and it really does come with your own personal tutor because the owner of the company is willing to answer any questions and do short videos to help you understand. So I am now in level 3 of level 7 and I'm moving right ahead. So as we go through the levels, we're going to do videos about the different questions. So today we are going to talk about robbery versus larceny. What is the big difference? I've gone through so many questions about larceny and robbery, and now I just really want to take a step back and understand, because remember, this is my first exposure to everything because I am preparing for the bar exam without going to law school. So let's talk about what is robbery. So here we have this little picture down here. Now, the robber is like, stick 'em up, fella, old fella, grandpa. So common law, which from what I understand, and I need to learn more about it, is what's tested on the MBE exam versus the law of different states, but it is the felonious taking of goods or money from a person of another, or his presence against his will by violence or putting him in fear, and such violence must precede or accompany the stealing. So they have to be together. The violence or the fear of violence must accompany the stealing. So statutory definition. While frequently qualifying, the common law one sometimes has extended the meaning and should be referred to for the ambit of the term. So honestly, I don't know what you say about that, but basically, robbery means that you are taking somebody's property through violence or putting them in fear of such violence, and that has to be attached to the stealing. So now let's talk a little bit more about robbery in an alternative definition. So the felony is taking and carrying away of the personal property of another from his person or in his presence by violence or putting him in fear. So I'm gonna snatch your purse, give me your wallet, right? Or I'm in my car and you come up to my car and you carjack me, right? So it's not on my person, but maybe I'm at a gas station and I get carjacked. That would be robbery. So the aggravating circumstances necessary to constitute robbery, as distinguished from larceny. So one, the property must be taken from the person of another, right? But property taken in the presence of the owner in contemplation of law, taken from his person, so it has to be in his presence. That's robbery. The taking must not only be without the consent, but must be accomplished either by violence or by putting him in fear. So if I just walk up and I'm like, hey, give me your car, grandpa. Ha ha ha. If he's not afraid and there's no violence involved, then that wouldn't be robbery, right? Okay, so now, rob a Larcenberry, right? This is because robbery includes larceny, and all the elements that are necessary to constitute larceny are also necessary. So robbery goes a step beyond larceny because it has that violence or that fear attached to the taking away of someone else's property. So now let's keep it moving. So what is larceny? So we see here with the pickpocket. So a crime at common law, the illegal taking of property of another with intent to deprive the owner thereof. If you take my wallet and then I go into Starbucks, I'm gonna be like, I don't have any money. I don't have any money. right? And that's going to be larceny. So larceny in criminal law is the felonious taking of money or personal property of another. Larceny is distinguished from robbery and that the latter involves force or threats of injury against the person from whom the money or property is taken. So it's that violence or that fear that distinguish robbery from larceny, and the fact that it's in the presence of the person because they have to be there in order to feel fear or experience violence or experience the fear of violence. So some examples of larceny are picking another's pocket, embezzlement of funds by a bank employee, conversion to one's own, use of personal property belonging to another, or obtaining property by fraud or false pretenses. So I do believe that a larceny could turn into a robbery. This is something that hopefully saying you watch this video and saying would be the owner of bar exam drills, and you tell me if I'm right. So because in this picture where the man is picking the pocket, if the person turns around and then he holds him up at gunpoint and he says, "I'm taking your wallet," well then that larceny has now become a robbery. So now let us talk about out with the old and with the new. In common law, several elements had to be present to constitute larceny. The property actually had to be taken and carried away. It had to be in the absolute possession of the thief. And the taking and carrying had to be against the consent of the owner or possessor and accompanied by a simultaneous felonious intent at the time the property was taken. In the US today, various criminal codes of the states generally define larceny and classify it as either grand larceny or petit larceny. Under these codes, property is stolen and larceny is committed when the definite intent to deprive another of property or to appropriate the same to oneself or a third person, one wrongfully takes, obtains, or withholds such property from the owner of it. So if I think the property is mine, so if I'm at a restaurant and I see my phone, this pink phone on the table, and I have one just like it, and I take it and it's in my possession, that wouldn't be larceny because I thought at the time that it was my phone. So I did not have felonious intent versus if she puts her phone down and I go and I'm like, ooh, look, that's mine is an iPhone 8. That is an iPhone Infinity. I'm gonna go grab her phone. Well, now that's larceny. Okay, now let's talk about the elements of larceny. We need a title here. As always, we are correcting ourselves to a certain extent when we do this. So on larceny, larceny has the following elements, or it is the unlawful taking and carrying away. It has to be of someone else's property without the consent of the owner. And it has to be with the intent to permanently deprive the owner of the property. So one of these we want to talk about is the unlawful taking, right? And we have this text, so we're going to take this away. So the unlawful taking, so hold on, let me erase this. Please give me a second. All right, so let's see the next page. The unlawful taking. So if your car is repossessed by bank, this is not larceny because that is the lawful taking and carrying away. You didn't pay, we can come take your car. So that would not be larceny. Let's talk about how I'm going to take me away, aging myself, or anybody who remembers that the reference. Some states also require that the taker carry the property away. So for a movable property, so if someone, for instance, takes your house, right? That would be when the perpetrator has taken control of the property and removed its use or enjoyment from the owner. So this can also happen in co-ownership. If we own a property together, maybe a vacation or something like that, and we both are supposed to have certain weekends and I just move into the house, but then that can be considered larceny because I'm depriving you of the time to which you had access to the property. So even if you're a partial owner, you can do this. So OPP, someone else's property, for larceny to apply, the property in question must belong to someone else. If it belongs to the person taking it, then larceny would not apply. This is true even if one's property was in the possession of another at the time it was taken. So here's an example. Thank you so much to where did I get this from? Thank you so much to Fine Law for helping us to understand this. But it says, if I let my neighbor borrow my lawnmower and then they never give it back, they fail to turn it. If I go and take my lawnmower back, well, then it's mine. Right? So the only thing that matters is whether the person in control of the property had a better legal claim to the property than the person who took it. So if it's my lawnmower and you never gave it back and I come and take it, it's not larceny because it's mine. I have a better legal claim to it. So once again, here we go about people who co-own property can commit larceny if they deprive the co-owners of the right to use the property. So if 3 friends jointly purchase a computer, one of the friends moves away with the computer without the consent of the other friends, this would constitute theft. That would be larceny because they're supposed to be sharing it and now he's depriving it. Behind your back, is without the owner's consent. Even if someone intends to steal a piece of property, no larceny occurs if the owner consents to the transfer of ownership of the property. However, the however, it would be a crime if the owner transferred the property due to the person deceit or fraud, although these situations are covered by other property crimes. So on the MBE exam, you might see situations where people try to, in an estate, maybe what would happen is I know that I don't really have claim to an estate, but I come up with some false note from my uncle that says he was going to give me his antique chest, and then I take the chest. So even though the executor of the estate gives me the chest, it was under false pretenses. So therefore, that would be theft or that would be larceny. So if someone intends to steal a piece of property, no larceny occurs. So if what happens is I go over there, it's for example, I go over my neighbor's house and I intend to steal their lawnmower because it's been left in the yard for 3 weeks. And I'm like, they're not using it and I need it. And then when I get there, they're like, hey, I don't really need this lawnmower. Why don't you take it? Once again, that would not actually be larceny because it was given to me and it wasn't given to me by fraud or deceit. All right. So what is your motive? So the taker's intent matters. So the final element of larceny involves the taker's intent to permanently deprive the owner of use of enjoyment of the property. In other words, if the person who took the property intended to eventually give it back, this would not constitute larceny. Larceny is a specific intent crime, which means that the person taking the property must specifically intend to commit the larceny. So in a situation where a person reasonably believes that they own the property they are taking, they would not have the specific intent of the specific intent required of larceny. So once again, we go back to the coffee shop. I thought it was my phone, so that's not larceny. Okay, now we have to say that they have to intend to keep it forever. So when we go to the previous situation where the friend moved away and took the computer that he was sharing, if the friend was intending on coming back, maybe say in a month or so, then that would not constitute larceny because it is depriving them, excuse me, for it forever, permanently, right? And so that would not be larceny. Sorry, it's early in the morning. I'm so tired. Petty versus grand larceny. This made me think of Grand Theft Auto. Correct me if I am wrong. Would be what happens in Grand Theft Auto sometimes be larceny. I don't know if they do carjackings in this video game. I can play the video game, but it makes me think of grand theft or grand theft larceny. So states usually separate larceny into different categories based on the value of the item stolen. Grand larceny applies to higher value items, and petty or petty larceny applies to items of lesser value. Each state legislature decides the amount that divides a grand larceny from a petty larceny. States will also treat some larcenies as felonies and others as misdemeanors. So there you have it. Now, how many larceny charges can you get? This is just some general fun law had that I thought was interesting. So this is the common question that arises. Hopefully it doesn't rise for you because hopefully you haven't stolen or deprived anybody of their items, their merchandise, whatever you want to call it. So a common question that arises in larceny prosecutions is whether one larceny has occurred or several. Generally, multiple items stolen from the same owner at the same time will form one larceny, but some states allow prosecutors to charge such situations as multiple larceny. So what makes me wonder about this is, what if you stole items of different value? Would that make a difference? If I stole your car and also inside your car was a Starbucks mug, okay, one is grand, one is petty, right? So how does that happen? So of course, often look at the timing and locations of larceny to determine whether they form part of a single activity or several. If part of a single activity, only one larceny has occurred. If there were multiple activities, however, then there were also multiple larcenies. The determination of the number of larcenies can affect the number and severity of larceny charges. For example, if multiple takings of one's instance of larceny, the amount of the items taken could push the larceny into the realm of a felony. On the other hand, if multiple takings each formed a single occurrence of larceny, the defendant may face multiple lesser misdemeanor counts. The determination could have a great impact on the punishment the defendant receives. This is why it matters, because the number of larcenies could be the amount of it convicted, how long you're going to be in jail, or get parole or whatever you're going to get for committing this crime. I don't know that part yet. So now I just want to say thank you once again to my sponsor, Bar Exam Drills. I want to thank Fine Law and Cornell. And there was one other website that I used in the making of this video. I also got some information from watching videos from Studicata. So thank you so much for watching this video. Once again, we are taking the MBE exam by storm. Law school, who needs it? MBE, ready or not, here I come. Thank you, Bar Exam Drills, for making my study of law fun and possible. See you next time on the next episode of Legally Ignorant, Legally Raven Haired. Maybe by the end of this year, we will have picked our name. Signing off. Bye-bye.